I wish I was playing the game enough for this comment to even be true. I do need to find another game though. Let me just look up 3D fighting games. Damn!
Making the first move, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. The third chapter, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. Make your first move, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. The third chapter, so what's it gonna be? The third strike, y'all, is Street Fighter 3.
Hi. There seems to be a common sentiment. Per the spectacle of Season 2 growing old, people are looking for alternatives. Some turn to Feet Fighter, others to Guilty Gear, and you know what? I'm kind of tired of all of them. None of them really stuck. And you want to know why? None of them are 3D fighters. The games I mentioned are great games in their own right, but 3D games just have a different gameplay loop than 2D ones. And I don't think I'm alone. I mean, is FDX still playing Street Fighter? Is King J still playing City of the Wolves? Is Landon still playing Tag 2 like he was Tekken 8? No. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure some of those creators are playing and exploring their own games in their own free time. But honestly, nothing quite hits like Tekken, or more accurately, like a 3D fighting game. Since Tag 2, Tekken loyalists have been slowly disillusioned with the franchise. But this is an issue that has developed slowly over time, metastasizing in the background. Let's call it the 3D fighting game problem. It boils down to three main points. 1. 3D fighters are naturally very niche, being a subgenre of a subgenre. I think we can overestimate how popular fighting games are because we see sales numbers, but the general public doesn't even know what a fighting game truly is. Do you think the average Marvel Rivals player with a dent in their dome knows what frame data or a punish is? It doesn't help that fighting games have a 2. Naturally high barrier of entry and legacy knowledge. Every 3D fighting game is an archaeological artifact, all having decades-long legacies. While this creates rapport with the loyalists of the series, new players may get buried under a tidal wave of information and ass beatings online. Then the game goes from fun to uninstalled. The remaining community does not increase in numbers, in turn further motivating a lack of innovation. Then we get 3, the final pillar. The same 1 to 3 franchises cannibalizing themselves and re-releasing the same game 4 times in a row, monopolizing the market. This specific thing is not limited to the FGC. Smite owns the third-person MOBA. Withstanding the test of time, League of Legends and Dota dominate first-person MOBAs. Overwatch still remains the monolith of the hero shooter. And finally, Tekken with the 3D fighter. Go figures, capitalism doesn't breed innovation, it actually breeds the exact opposite. So how did we get here, other than capitalism? What caused Tekken being the only 3D fighter, other than capitalism? In order to fully understand any topic, you have to go back to the very beginning. Releasing in 1993, Virtua Fighter started it all. Spawning a mass wave of buzz, Virtua Fighter 1 defined not only a game with a strong visual and sonic design, but also carved out a new genre. In art, paradigms shift when a new category is created. Innovative methods and novel lenses of viewing and interacting with game development and enjoyment drastically changed overnight, and Virtua Fighter did it. Roadblock number 1 came just 4 years later. Return of the Jedi-ing Virtua Fighter, Tekken 3 released and blew it out of the water. Currently, on its 3rd installment, Virtua Fighter 3 is a great game in its own right, but it couldn't compete with Tekken's bloated sales figures. Public discourse ensued about which game was better, with everything from magazine articles to early gaming websites. Conversations shifted from actual inquiries about the games to arguing which one was better, a trend that will continue with Virtua Fighter. And it makes sense. The main designer of Virtua Fighter 1 shifted direction, leaving Sega and joining Namco prior to Tekken 1's release, staying on the team until Tekken 3. Tekken 3 is thought to be the foundation of Tekken, but Tekken 2 also made instrumental changes to the franchise. Virtua Fighter also introduced uneven stages, which Tekken did borrow from, but more importantly, heavily influenced Dead or Alive. With Tekken 5 coming out, it was the final nail in the coffin for Virtua Fighter. Virtua Fighter 5 continued but was under its shadow for a majority of its runtime. VF's problems are pretty clear. It's been constantly compared with other games despite being the first 3D fighter. Appealing to casuals means the slightly sleeker Tekken, the slightly sexier Dead or Alive, and the slightly more magical Soul Calibur all have stronger visual flair which Virtua Fighter lacks. It also lacked additional content. Virtua Fighter 5 released with one additional offline mode, with every single one of its competitors featuring a full story mode and additional offline modes. Yes, I'm counting Scenario Campaign from Tekken 6 as a story mode. Today we're experiencing Virtua Fighter 6's rollout, and may I ask, where is the content? It's been extremely slow. I mean, why would you announce it so early if you weren't gonna say anything for 7 months? So far, we've had 3 characters revealed, no stages, and no legitimate gameplay yet. Of course, with time, this will change, and I think it's entirely fine to deprive the public of information to generate hype. But this doesn't feel like that. This feels like they announced it early because of the sentiment surrounding Tekken 8. I would love for Sega to prove me incorrect and drop it early 2026. But unfortunately, I'm predicting around like a mid-2027. Sega, please make me wrong. And please make Aoi and Gene S tier. Dead or Alive 1 through 3 were fucking awesome. Dead or Alive, in my opinion, has the most intuitive gameplay. I'd argue it feels the best out of the 3D fighting games. Besides that, Dead or Alive is known for its stage transitions and beautiful animations, especially with its hold system, the bread and butter of the game. Dead or Alive actually got so big it entered the mainstream, securing a movie deal, front page in gaming journals, and making several television appearances. And this was all a part of Itagaki's plan. To compete with the chokehold Tekken had on the fighting game industry, the creator of Dead or Alive set his goal to target print and digital media since Tekken was dominating the multi-million-dollar arcade industry. Allow me to introduce you to WCG, one of the most 2000 show of all time. WCG is a surreal experience running for 2 seasons on Sci-Fi. It took 12 gamers and internet personalities and placed them head-to-head in some of the most corny video game competitions I've ever seen. WCG featured 3 fighting games, Virtua Fighter, Dead or Alive, and Soul Calibur, with all of them actually being 3D. All 3 games got screen time, especially Soul Calibur during the finale episode, but Dead or Alive generated the most hype out of the 3. I think it was in part to Suzy being in the lineup for the first season. He was already well known when he joined the show, as he's a Dead or Alive 4 world champion and went on to compete in Dead or Alive 5 as well. You may know him from his animations on YouTube that have garnered over 1 billion views. Fun fact, he actually interviewed Obama in 2016. He was also on a Mike Hollow stream like 2 weeks ago. So if you think about it, Obama is like kind of my mutual. Placing this much stock into a newly developing esports market actually turned out to be a mistake in the long run. Esports very suddenly became an economic bubble, as the novelty of watching a 26-year-old dropout sweat a Guitar Hero for $250,000 wore off. To get the full breadth of the situation, you have to know what an economic bubble is. And don't worry, I didn't know what that shit was either like 5 minutes ago. But it's actually pretty simple. An economic bubble is when the value of a good or service rises rapidly due to increased interest or speculation. Eventually, the projected value of the good is never met. So the bubble eventually bursts, causing sharp declines and financial losses for investors and, way more importantly, the players. In this case, the good or service was the esports circuit itself, the game, or the competitors. The increased speculation was the bizarre time of the 2000s and 2010s, where playing Halo was like starting your own company and flying to Mars. It's safe to say Dead or Alive took a little bit of a hit once the bubble burst, but the actual act of getting the game out in front of people turned out to have positive fallout. Despite this time period being a sort of renaissance for fighting games, there was still only space for one 3D fighter. Dead or Alive 5 defied the odds by releasing to massive success, only increasing as Koei Tecmo released a free-to-play version. So, of course, after 4 mainline titles having performed well, the next game was a success. Usually when a game releases, people are excited, but Dead or Alive was more of a wet blanket. It had the typical issues of a modern-day release. Modernization, simplification of gameplay, microtransactions leading to a game that was like $1,000 in total, all issues that we're very familiar with. What I really think is Dead or Alive's biggest issue is not knowing who to appeal to. I try not to mention this when I talk about Dead or Alive because it honestly isn't important for it as a fighting game itself, but the team did have conflicting statements about sexualizing the characters, stating originally the game was going to head towards a less sexualized design, just to roll that back immediately once the game came out. The art direction was confused as the realistic style selected for Dead or Alive 5 was made to look shittier with high exposure, higher bloom, and softening effects. Funnily enough, this lighting style was reminiscent of Dead or Alive 4 era lighting. The gameplay was also watered down with the introduction of meter and brake holds. All of those factors compounded, leading to middling and negative reviews. None of this was good for the game as people immediately fell out of passion with it. Passion is what creates legacy over time, and legacy is what keeps people coming back to the next game. Right now, Dead or Alive's in a sort of limbo. You'll be able to find matches in Dead or Alive 5 and 6, but it'll probably be against someone who's been playing the game since its release, further raising this barrier of entry. Oh, Soul Calibur, Soul Calibur. It's always been in a sort of awkward position being the younger brother of Tekken and sort of the younger cousin of Virtua Fighter, but that's never stopped it from having its own success. It did occupy a niche being a weapons-based 3D fighter. It also had a really strong aesthetic and artistic direction, which was kind of lacking from games at this time. They were sort of just optimizing like, if it looks cool, then we'll put it in the game. I honestly think you could say Soul Calibur 2, 3, or 4 are your favorite, and really no one would bat an eye. Okay, well, maybe 4 a little bit. They all had a strong art design, unique gameplay, and great rosters. So let's reboot the whole franchise.
Soul Calibur 5.
It was kind of a meme on the internet to shit on the quality of Soul Calibur 5. The reboot sent us 17 years into the future, replacing the old cast majority with a new cast of characters, some based off of the old characters and some direct successors. This was a really expansive time to get into Soul Calibur as there were new moves and combos to try out. There was honestly a lot of stuff to lab, and oh my god. Okay, maybe every new character wasn't loved. Actually, none of them really were. Most people that liked or tolerated them would have preferred their previous iteration. It was a really odd time to be a Soul Calibur fan. Imagine playing Bruce in Tekken 6 and then in the next game his name is Josie. Okay, well. Imagine playing Raven and then in the next game you're... Fuck. Okay, you're playing Eddie. Fuck. I think the issue was that it's the entire game's roster. This doesn't even mention some of the other controversial balance decisions they made, like the addition of meter or a nerfing of guard impact. For the casuals, the story mode was underwhelming as the two main characters did not come across as likable. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that shit. They also had like a weird incest thing going on, but I don't put that sort of thing past Namco. The netcode was remarkably bad. There was little to no support after the game released, and all in all, it was just a mess. The plug was pulled early and the series went into hibernation. Soul Calibur 6 dusted off the rubble and rose like a phoenix. Kind of. Rebooting the series after the 5th installment, Soul Calibur 6 went back to its roots, reviving the original cast. Not gonna lie, I don't remember much of Soul Calibur 6 despite following the development and the release and Season 1. Energy around the game was pretty soured after Soul Calibur 5, so regardless of the condition of the current game, the devs were still fighting an uphill battle. It made a lot of good decisions like going back to the original cast and getting some of the really interesting IPs in for the guest slots, but it also had a lot of huge missteps, like having a mini rock paper scissors simulator in the middle of your fighting game. If you haven't noticed, Soul Calibur is really experimental. This willingness to change is good on one hand as it keeps players engaged, allowing for more wild interactions. It also led to a lack of competitive integrity. Remember Yoda's hitbox in Soul Calibur 4 or Soul Calibur 5 with Algol? From the perspective of the devs, the balancing and overall management have been directionless. It kind of feels like they don't take Soul Calibur as seriously, and that sucks because Soul Calibur is actually pretty cool. Bloody Roar differentiated itself with its button layout by including its signature beast button. Because of that, Bloody Roar suffered a lot less from allegations of plagiarism. BR3 released to positive response from its community, so in order to capitalize on that, Hudson and Aiding prepared for the 4th installment of the game, and they advertised it as a big change from the previous games, adding a slew of new characters. Now, if we know anything about big changes in gaming, they usually are never good. So, Bloody Roar 4 released in 2003 to reviews. People didn't love the game. They didn't hate it either, considering the fact that there weren't a lot of core changes from Bloody Roar 3. The only thing that did change was the beast mechanic. Now 2 separate health bars. This was the main thing that Bloody Roar fans asked to not be changed as far as gameplay was considered. You killed that aiding. Other than that gameplay change, the rest of the game was frankly unfinished. The game released with 16 characters. Tekken 5 released with 33 the following year. The Bloody Roar team is reusing old stages despite only having 10 on release. Some of the worst voice acting I've ever heard in my entire fucking life.
Yes, thanks to you. After that, I morphed from my original body!
What? Is this energy Gaia?
Okay, I guess.
The pressure!
No. The unborn? What did you do to Nagi?
And just to top it off, a horrible story, my favorite. It has similar pitfalls to Soul Calibur 5 and Tekken 6. Retconning a previously established story for no reason, adding characters the audience didn't resonate with, and changing focus to highlight them. It's clear that Bloody Roar 4 as a project was rushed out the door, soiling the legacy of a pretty fun and engaging 3D fighter. Mortal Kombat is very important to understand because it's one of the most popular fighting game series out there. The decisions that NetherRealm decides to make with their game could indicate broader industry trends, and Mortal Kombat shifting from a 3D fighter to a 2D fighter was our first inkling of 2D supremacy. Mortal Kombat Armageddon was released in 2006, being the final 3D game, returning with a full 2D reboot in 2011. 2008 to 2013 was a sort of renaissance period for fighting games, with popular titles like Street Fighter 4 topping charts. Indie games like Skullgirls started to make their mark and leave their legacy, and old head franchises like Marvel 1, 2, and 3 maintained their cultural foothold, all 2D games. While 3D games like Tekken and Soul Calibur and Dead or Alive were all actively active, they truly were the B tier of fighting games at the time. If you really wanted to make money, you would invest in making a 2D game. NetherRealm took note of this and steered Mortal Kombat to be a 2.5D game, having the digital fidelity of 3D models and textures, but the pros of a 2D game. In a similar vein, Killer Instinct had the option to go with a 3D or 2D model for the game, as the 2013 version was a full reboot. Iron Galaxy, the team responsible for the game, chose 2.5D very specifically as that was the industry shift at the time. It was 2 years after Mortal Kombat 9's release, and the success of that game only cemented that people preferred 2D games. At that time, and still today, 2.5D games have sort of become industry standard. Marvel, Street Fighter, Killer Instinct, Mortal Kombat, King of Fighters, DNF Duel, Guilty Gear, and so many more games are all 2.5D now. And all of these games, in their own right, have performed incredibly well. The 2000s and 2010s were obviously a time of experimentation for fighting games. Street Fighter Cross Tekken was a pipe dream we thought that we'd never see, and we regret asking for it. The idea of a crossover between the most popular 2D and 3D game represents a very interesting proposition in relation to this video. Originally, the game was supposed to have a 2D and 3D version respectively made by Capcom and Bamco. The 2D version was the only version that actually got released, but I do wish we had the 3D version. We would have been able to compare the sales and reception directly, but we did eventually see Tekken's take on 2D characters with Tekken 7. I think it's safe to say 3D characters port to 2D games better than vice versa. It's difficult to say what better exactly means, but in this case I want it to mean more intuitive and more balanced. The reason a character like Lily can exist in Street Fighter is because Cammy and Manon exist. The archetype of a fireball-less, evasive character has a home in a 2D space, but does a fireball-slinging Shoto in a 3D plane? Akuma, Noctis, Geese, Eliza, and arguably Kunimitsu are the 2D characters of Tekken 7, and oh boy did they cause some issues. Fucking up balance, breaking the game, death combos from minor punishes. By the end of the game, these characters were admittedly healthier. but the community still has not forgiven them for their transgressions. Arena fighters are also an interesting case. Truly the most 3D fighting game of any, they let you navigate around the map independent of your opponent, yet they still sell. In fact, they sell millions of copies. The reason why arena fighters work is because they're often based off of popular IPs like Naruto or Dragon Ball. They're also produced by Bamco, just like Tekken. Arena fighters are also not taken as seriously as other games. The balance, for better or for worse, is not the main concern for developers. Broken shit can exist, and it's fine even when the game is being played for money. It's an inherent aspect of an arena fighter that distinguishes the wheat from the chaff. Your ability to survive in the chaos and madness created by that environment is what defines a good player. The same marketing that appeals to Smash players is the same marketing that appeals to arena fighters. In an industry of dead franchises, why did Tekken survive? The year is 2002. You kick off your shoes after school and boot up your PS2 and you hear this. You know you're about to have the greatest time of your life. You take your time to appreciate the music and atmosphere consistent through every button press. Excitedly, you pick your favorite character, Haorong, grinding to the last stage of arcade, and, okay. Maybe this isn't the greatest game at the casual level, you know, some minor bugs, but you're sure once you look at some tournaments, you'll see the game shine. Tekken is no stranger to releasing a bad game. I mean, look around right now. Tekken 4 was a commercial and competitive flop despite its strong artistic direction. Tekken was able to recover after a sort of lightning in a bottle release with Tekken 5. After, I think it's safe to say the quality of Tekken has slowly been degrading. Each game in different ways, but Bamco has failed upwards for the past 3 games straight. Some of these, like Tekken Revolution, were genuine missteps with unbalanced gameplay and borderline unethical microtransactions. Others were an earnest attempt at experimentation, like Tekken 4. Tekken has just been in the right place and right time multiple times. Tekken 5 was a great product, but so was Virtua Fighter 4 and Dead or Alive 4, and Soul Calibur 5, sort of. Nothing uniquely made Tekken 5 worthy of success and unworthy of competition. To be honest, if you look at Bamco and some of its shareholders like BlackRock, they have a history of horizontal monopolization and employee poaching, so it wouldn't be surprising if they allegedly had a role in allegedly removing competition from the market in order to make Tekken succeed. It's just that 2D games are better, right? I mean, if you go to any arcade, if you can find one, the cabinets will be not fighting games, but if it is a fighting game, it'll be a 2D game. 2D games seem to just appeal to more people, and in today's market, that just means better. They have smaller move lists, are generally easier to understand, and as Chad III would say, have easier problems to solve. If someone is jumping a lot, it's pretty easy to understand and recognize that you need to do an anti-air. It isn't immediately as obvious that you need to step and duck the second move of that string you scrub. The longer fighting games are known as 2D games, the stronger the brand association becomes. The same way Vaseline, Coke, and Band-Aid are a completely valid replacement for the product you're describing, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat completely control the public's understanding of what a fighting game is. If you want to appeal to them, of course you'd make a 2D fighting game. Look at 2KO, a fighting game made for non-fighting game players. 2KO could have been in any medium, but of course they decided to go with a 2D game, very intentionally. It goes without saying this, but all of this is bullshit. Nothing objectively makes one genre better than another. The real reason is marketing, and 3D games of course are harder to market and develop. This leads to hotfixes and patches being more expensive to code and more time consuming to develop. Cosmetics become more fickle and extensive to develop as well, and none of this is mentioning the complexity of bugs. From the perspective of the developer or stockholder, why would you make a more expensive and more difficult to develop game when you can just fart out your Street Fighter or Marvel clone? Alright, so what is there left to do? I feel like this entire video I've just been kind of like complaining and giving a history rather than an actual solution. I mean, the only game left in our favorite genre is actively cannibalizing itself. And let me start by saying none of these are necessarily one-step solutions or one-size-fits-all, but it's something damn. God damn it. Play other games, or like no games at all, really. You can still invest time in 3D fighters. Regardless of what I said, all of the 3D fighters mentioned today still have a very long history and very committed scenes. Not just fighters though. I noticed that things like team games provide me a similar level of mental stimulation. I don't know what the fuck it is. Maybe like the co-op or team element adds another dimension in the same way that there's a literal third dimension in a fighting game. MOBAs also give me a similar feeling. When I'm feeling really bad and mentally ill, I'll boot up Smite or something. If you of course still want to play Tekken, you can do what I've been doing, which is emulating or paying very real money and real currency to play the previous games. I've learned new things about Lily revisiting her Tekken 5 iteration. Honestly, it's been a lot of fun. And just like the previous games, there's still communities developed for previous Tekken games, especially 6 and Tag 2, I noticed. I mean, and of course 7. Okay, off that damn screen, there's martial arts and there's sports and dance. I feel like all of these are great ways to get connected with your body that almost simulate a lot of the things that you see in a fighting or action game. As corny as that may sound, part of the reason why people got attached to Tekken was for characters like How Wrong, who were doing Taekwondo. People that I'm sure have a black belt in Taekwondo thought that shit was cool. But yeah, that's it. That's it. If I didn't help you, whatever. I want to give a quick update from my channel, as well as just talk a little bit about how I'm feeling about Tekken and just fighting games in general. Regarding Tekken, I'm in sort of an odd state. The game is still awful, so I'm not playing it, which is why this video is sort of about something else, and it's much more highly edited and something that I want to put out more so than just like a gameplay video. Of course, I would be smitten to put out one if the game didn't fucking suck, but it does, alas, and I don't really enjoy lying that much. I will say I do miss playing Lily and John, like those characters I can't really get anywhere else, and so that's a sad element, and I hope that they do fix the game at a certain point. But it seems like where they're going is what they want the game to look like. Making this was sort of the catharsis that I needed, because it's very easy to be like, oh, I'm not enjoying Call of Duty, let me look at Battlefield, let me look at CSGO, let me look at da-da-da-da-da. There's a lot of competitors in like adjacent or literal competitors to games that you can find, but Tekken has monopolized this genre quite a bit, and it makes it very difficult for me to like play anything else. Even with my history of Dead or Alive and Soul Farterbur, it's still like I don't have as much investment and education and expertise as I do with Tekken, and my whole channel is about expertise and talking about what I know, you know, so I don't really know what to do. Similar spaces where I was before. I think I'm just going to continue to like invest in artistic creation rather than like literally focusing on Tekken. I'm going to cover fighting games most likely because the whole channel is kind of geared towards that, and my life is sort of geared towards that. I enjoy it. It is a large pillar of my life, as are other things that I may make videos about or just a separate channel for. But at this point, I really see this channel as more so like a space for me to practice editing, but like it's just a space for me to get better holistically creating a video, no matter if that's scripting or the actual thumbnail, or the voice work or the acting or the editing, which is kind of where I'm investing the most amount of time into now. Oh, this is also a face reveal. I want to not mention that. I almost forgot, but yeah. The only thing I thought about for this is a FD Signifier video called Why Are Black People So Good at Fighting Games? So I feel like almost every Tekken content creator is either Asian or black. I think that's all that I had to say. Yeah, I'm gonna continue to keep my eye on Tekken 8. It fucking sucks, but I don't want my channel to just be a place where I kind of like rag on the same game, because there's not a lot for me to say. If they were continuously like fucking up over and over again, then I would, you know, continuously be making those videos, but it's kind of getting stale because they're making the same disgusting decisions. But yeah, and yeah. Without further ado, I think je devrais dire adieu.